If my YouTube audience analytics are at all accurate, many of you watching are somewhat to quite a bit younger than me. As an elder millennial uncomfortably close to Gen X, my generation experienced a very rapid, very chaotic transformation in the way we produced, distributed, and received popular culture. I got a dial-up modem when I was around 10 years old, which I used to log into CompuServe to look up hints and secrets for Final Fantasy III, 6 in Japan. Getting AOL and later an internet browser that could access the wild west of Web 1.0 was life-changing, exposing me to a world of infinite possibilities, of sights and wonders just around every strange corner. Like many boys of a certain age, I loved comedy. Stand-up, movies, TV, Weird Al CDs, you name it. And in those days, word of mouth was the main way I and my friends found things that made us laugh. Even though the internet was growing into a global phenomenon, many of my friends didn't have regular access to it, and even when they did, it wasn't just 6 walled gardens serving up algorithmically optimized content to you. You had to know where to go. And even then, during the dial-up age, download speeds were so slow that online video and even audio was kind of a rare treat. So even though the web revolution was about to change everything, offline content was still king, and you still had to know someone funny to be exposed to funny things.
Now, Kevin Marks, Roxanne Rodriguez, Kevin Marks, Dwayne Alexander, Roxanne Rodriguez, and Rick and Kevin Marks. This is Kevin Marks.
It was late middle school when I started to catch wind of something bubbling in the white boy collective consciousness, an album by a man named Adam Sandler, a comedian who wrote for and later performed with Saturday Night Live. The album was called They're All Gonna Laugh at You, and when you or one of your friends finally got your hands on it, it was a big deal. We'd gather together in dirty bedrooms and cozy dens, and later our beat-up first cars. We'd enjoy some pilfered booze or a little weed, and we'd listen to this album, laughing our asses off. We'd quote bits back and forth to each other, and if you didn't own the CD, you'd spend days waiting to hear it again so you could laugh at your favorite parts. And again, I just want to acknowledge how strange it must sound to you younger viewers out there, the idea that we couldn't just access our favorite songs and videos instantly from anywhere at all times. Sometimes you only heard the tail end of something and you had to wait weeks to encounter it again in the wild. Sometimes the friend with that weird Gandahar VHS moved away and you forgot the name, so you spend the next 20 years with a vague memory of a cartoon about cavemen with faces in their stomachs, and you try to describe it to people and they look at you like you're insane, but it was real, damn it. It was French, but it was real. Anyway, the Adam Sandler CD. They're All Gonna Laugh at You is a collection of 22 tracks comprised of 17 skits and 5 songs. I would classify the style of humor on the album as juvenile, crass, or to put it in conversation with a larger movement taking shape in the 90s, Grossout comedy. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. Here, some 3 decades later, I want to analyze the gross-out comedy of They're All Gonna Laugh at You to see how my feelings have changed regarding something that used to be so special to me. But to do so, I need to talk about some gross-out comedy from this decade. I need to talk to you about the Northern Boys. Perhaps you've heard of Pete and Baz, 2 old British grandpas who are inexplicably great hip-hop artists for some reason. Well, the collective responsible for Pete and Baz brought us another great septuagenarian act, the Northern Boys. While Pete and Baz are operating more in the UK drill and grime tradition, talking about selling drugs and murdering rivals, the Northern Boys have an altogether different vibe.
I love drugs and sketchy pills, and my favourite ones are the ones that kill quickly. When I go when my loved ones miss me, well the answer's no.
The production is drawing more from disco, funk, and house music, but it's the lyrics that really set them apart. That fateful day 2 years ago when I heard Norman Payne say the following, my life changed forever.
I gotta take a number 3. That's a piss and a shit and a wank in a tree. I said hello there.
I would encourage you to pause this video and go watch Party Time, Sexy Train, or Give It To Me, because my description of Northern Boys lyrics can't possibly do them justice. But at the risk of ruining the joke by explaining it, I'll do my best. The Northern Boys speak from the persona of sad, pathetic old men who are seeking a modicum of pleasure or human recognition before they take their own lives. And that may sound like an odd basis for comedy music, but I would argue that this is simply a further evolution of the artistic sensibilities in the vein of Charles Bukowski or the films of Abel Ferrara, or perhaps even John Waters, as we'll see in a moment. Norman Payne and Patrick Carney Jr. speak about their failures and insecurities with the same calm confidence other artists speak about their accolades. They talk about being addicted to drugs, being out of work, being behind on rent, being undesirable to their wives, having humiliation fetishes, and dying alone. They greet what they see as their inevitable total abjection and tragic death with admirable absurdism. And while that description attempts to impose a narrative thread on the Northern Boys vibe, it doesn't fully capture the breadth of topics they discuss. For example,
the robot pet can't be defeated. He shoots lasers from his eyes. Should've never given me the nanotech, cause now I kill motherfuckers with my nanotech thighs. 5, 6 to the bastard, 7. Fingers in the balls like David Beckham. 8, 9 to the bastard, 10. Picking on a crotch like a free-range hen. Big bowl of the cocaine, that's me breakfast. I tried crack once, I just wanted to test it, and I'm hooked now. I could marry my pipe. My wife wouldn't care, she just wants me to die.
So, I hope it's obvious why I consider Northern Boys tracks to be part of the Grossout comedy genre, and I wanted to highlight them because I like the Northern Boys. Their music makes me laugh and it brings me joy, sleazy though it may be. So, with that context in mind, this week I revisited Adam Sandler's 1993 classic, They're All Gonna Laugh at You, to see how well that Grossout comedy aged. We open with a sketch called Assistant Principal's Big Day. The premise of the sketch is that the regular principal is out sick for the week, so the assistant principal is delivering the morning announcements, including new school policies he is enacting with his newfound power. These policies are that female athletes at the school must now shower in the assistant principal's private office while he Oh, and that the boys' gymnastics team has to each other while he eats. Yes, the opening track on Adam Sandler's debut comedy album, the skit that will set the tone for the hilarious journey ahead of us, is a skit about a school administrator sexually abusing students. Next up, we have a sketch called The Buffoon and the Dean of Admissions. The Buffoon is a recurring Adam Sandler character who speaks entirely in rude non sequiturs when talking to serious, intelligent adults. And not to be whatever, but the Buffoon's accent is suspiciously similar to Sandler's idea of a Mexican-American accent.
Your secretary's a real fat bitch, man!
Anyway, the joke here is that the dean seems unflappably courteous to the buffoon no matter what filthy thing comes out of his mouth. I hope you think that's a rich comedy vein to mine because we haven't seen the last of it. The third track is called Buddy, and the joke here is that some guys always call each other buddy, while other guys always call each other dude, but black guys always call each other homie. Then we have The Longest Pee, a more cerebral art installation in which a man pees for over 2 minutes straight. This is possibly the funniest thing on the album. Then we get our first song, Food Innuendo Guy, a smoky, chunky rock number where a man proposes numerous sexual situations using culinary lingo before calling himself the Food Innuendo Guy, in case you weren't sure what was going on. Then we have The Beating of a High School Janitor, a short audio play in which a school janitor is beaten for no reason. See, the joke is like, he's a janitor, right? You know, like he cleans the school, and then someone viciously assaults him out of nowhere. Like, you get it? Like, do you get the joke? Like, he's a janitor, and then somebody punches and kicks him. Do you get it? Like and subscribe if you get it. Fuck, this is gonna take forever. Okay, lightning round. Here's the name of the sketch and the underlying joke. Ready? Go. Right field, the main character can't catch. The buffoon and the valedictorian. The buffoon says rude things to the valedictorian. Mr. Spindell's phone call. An old man doesn't understand how a phone works. The Thanksgiving song. Adam Sandler can think of rhyming words on the fly. The beating of a high school bus driver. A bus driver is viciously beaten for no reason. Oh, Mom. What if the mom from Carrie just said, "They're all gonna laugh at you," over and over and over and over and over and over again? Fatty McGee, he's fat.
He's fat!
At a medium pace, kinky sex is weird. The beating of a high school science teacher. A science teacher is viciously beaten for no reason. The cheerleader. A cheerleader cries after being bullied for no reason. I'm so wasted. A drug dealer keeps catching a guy faking being high.
Dwayne Alexander.
Lunch Lady Land. Lunch ladies are ugly. The beating of a high school Spanish teacher. A Spanish teacher is viciously beaten for no reason. Toll Booth Willie. Everybody bullies the toll booth guy for no reason. Teenage love on the phone. A guy's girlfriend leaves him for the buffoon who says rude things. My Little Chicken. A man seduces and has sex with a chicken. Yeah. As I sat there listening with a face of stone, frozen in an expression most disagreeable, 2 questions occurred to me. Number 1, why did I think this was revolutionary comedy when I was 13? And number 2, why do I love the Northern Boys and hate this? Because on the face of it, the Northern Boys and Adam Sandler seem to share a lot of DNA. Sorry, now I'm being gross. They joke about handjobs and weird sex and being rude and unlikable. Why does hearing Norman Payne talk about honking off in a tree make me laugh, and hearing Adam Sandler talk about honking off make me roll my eyes? And yet, I think answering number 2 will help contextualize number 1, because not all Grossout comedy is created equal, and Sandler and the Northern Boys are doing entirely different things. If I had to pinpoint the comedic center of gravity holding Sandler's album together, I think it's that it's sorta kinda funny to bully people. Take the cheerleader sketch. The entire joke is that this cheerleader is trying to do her thing, and some douchebag in the crowd keeps telling her that she sucks. Not about anything in particular, not about a behavior or a character trait. It is purely just a random act of dehumanization, and the sketch clearly intends us to laugh with the douchebag.
We're gonna win, cause we're the—
Sit down!
You guys are assholes! You think this is easy being a cheerleader? Let's see you come down here and try it!
Shut up!
You're the one who should be shutting up!
In Fatty McGee, we're supposed to laugh that the main character is out of breath after climbing stairs. In Lunch Lady Land, we're supposed to laugh at the kindly lunch lady because her age has made her unsightly. And again, there are 4, count them 4 sketches solely about assaulting a random person minding their own business. To participate in the humor, you have to find it inherently amusing to fuck with people who aren't hurting anybody, which, when I was a 13-year-old boy, I did. The Northern Boys are operating from an entirely different position. If Adam Sandler sees humor in forcing humiliation on people who can't do anything about it, the Northern Boys see humor in the way men humiliate themselves seeking pleasure and validation. Adam Sandler's douchebags gain power over others through their douchebaggery, whereas the Northern Boys call attention to the fact that seeking power over others makes you a douchebag. Adam Sandler is edgy because he punches down, whereas the Northern Boys are edgy because they punch themselves. Earlier, I suggested that the Northern Boys are operating in the same sleazy space John Waters pioneered decades earlier. One of the reasons that I think this is an apt comparison is because while both artists are comfortable depicting and reveling in filth and depravity, both artists also clearly have this fiercely compassionate core animating them. John Waters is an icon of queer cinema, and he didn't get there making elegant character studies of admirable homosexuals. His queer characters are gross, annoying, and often violent, but their queerness, their disability, their fatness, their humanity is rarely, if ever, the butt of the joke. The society masquerading as polite is John Waters' target. Likewise, the Northern Boys play characters who are often gross, annoying, and violent, full of self-loathing and fear. And yet I really do think that the target of their humor is a system that makes men feel this way, and perhaps the men who make themselves feel this way. I really do think that there's this weird current of love in their music. I know, hear me out. For starters, there's this line in Nobody Likes Me where Norman Payne talks about wanting to hook up with a trans man. But the core of the humor is that Norman is super horny, not that it's funny or gross to hook up with a trans person. In the narrative of the song, Norman just genuinely finds this person attractive like he does other cis people he mentions wanting to boink. In Give It To Me, this is made even more explicit when Norman salutes trans people and bisexual people by name, and then in the chorus, the boys make sure to include non-binary people. For me, this contextualizes other lines in this and other tracks where they talk about sucking dick. Their pansexuality is not the butt of the joke, it's part of their character, something that simply brings them joy. Looking at their music, their oeuvre as a whole, something keeps jumping out at me. For as much as they talk about being low down, no good, dirty rotten scoundrels, they still like to dance, and they want to dance with you, whoever you are. They believe that they and you are still worthy of joy. Now, maybe you disagree with my read of the Northern Boys, but I hope it at least makes sense to you why I enjoy their music, but found Adam Sandler's album so unpleasant. The Northern Boys will lend you a smoke after you both finish puking behind a bar. Adam Sandler will just call you a shouting from a passing car. And to me, this also explains why I thought this was so funny when I was 13, because I was a deeply insecure boy until about 5 or 6 years ago. When someone else was being mocked, I was safe. Someone else was the target, not me. As the fat kid in my 7th grade class, getting good at using other kids as a form of bully chaff was a key safety strategy for me. Look at that guy, not me. Adam Sandler's album is like a bullying anthology series, thematically connected short stories about feeling big by making someone else feel small. And as someone who hated feeling small, I unfortunately found this proposition all too intoxicating. I think rude, antisocial, gross-out comedy is a rite of passage for most teens in some form or another. Part of growing up is learning that rules are arbitrary, that violating decorum creates powerful reactions, and that forbidden fruit can taste mighty sweet. Part of growing up is discovering the consequences of pushing boundaries and trespassing norms. So, I don't necessarily want to imply that Adam Sandler's 1993 album is immoral to own, listen to, or even like. The same reparative reading that I give to the Northern Boys, perhaps you are already performing for Mr. Sandler in the comments. To which I say, please, go ahead. I'm a roast. Baste me. I also don't know whether I'd say an album like this teaches kids to be little shitheads as opposed to simply just appealing to shithead sensibilities that were already there. Perhaps the worst you can accuse it of is reinforcing those sensibilities. But then perhaps the pop culture landscape is so different this wouldn't even resonate with this new generation of teens anyway. I think I'm just interested in the weird, gooey gray area where transgressive art flirts with both an ideology of liberation as well as a politics of cruelty. As someone who grew up a deeply repressed religious kid, I love transgressive art. I find it exhilarating, freeing, healing at times. But I also recognize that just because oppression comes from systems and structures does not mean that transgression in and of itself is inherently noble. Some norms are normal because they make life nicer. Saying please and thank you isn't some repressive ritual we must destroy. It's just a little social signal of amicability, a little sign that you mean no harm. And I think teasing out that balance is what makes transgressive art so interesting to engage with, because I can hear in my mind palace a hypothetical radical activist explaining that actually saying please and thank you is repressive in some way, and I think that's an interesting perspective to consider. Likewise, I can hear other hypothetical activists and advocates with a whole host of reactions to Adam Sandler, and the Northern Boys, and John Waters for that matter. Pink Flamingos has scenes of incest. Is that okay? What does it mean? I don't know. You should write about it. What do you think? Lastly, this topic is interesting to me because I've watched my sense of humor change quite a bit over my 41 years on this blue marble. While I have always maintained a love of pure absurdity, my tastes have evolved from gross-out comedy like Adam Sandler and American Pie, to lighthearted stuff like Brian Regan, slightly edgier stuff like Norm Macdonald, to my latest love, the surreal, often anti-humor humor of Tim Heidecker, Eric Wareheim, and Tim Robinson. Weirdly, the things I find funny have changed as my politics has become more radical. Did humor open me up to more radical thoughts, or did my radicalism open me up to new forms of humor? What is the relationship between one's politics and what one finds funny? Why are lefties so good at shitposting? Why is Elon Musk the least funny man to ever live? I have no idea. You tell me in the comments. Anyway, I don't really have a call to action or any kind of conclusion to this video.
And Rick